Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning, where we're reading his wonderful book. Which one is it? The Selfish God?
That's right.
The Selfish God, yes. And I think today we're on chapter 12. Yeah, so far it's starting to pick up steam, and I see we just had our friend Ronald from Australia come in the Zoom room. Always good to have more people in the Zoom live. You can hear the rabbi head on and partake. It's always great. So let's just tune right in. Shalom, Rabbi. You're live on the air. We're going to turn the class over to you and let you take it from here.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everybody. And I'm going to share the screen now. First with, what was it? Here. So I just wanted to go over my note to the emails. You might say that up to now I've been showing that Torah text has deeper messages than the surface meaning. Tonight, I'm hoping to see that even the surface is deep with meaning. So little play on words there. What I want to do now is go over to, I'm not going to use the, I was making late minute changes to the handout I sent, so I'll be reading just the odd time in a little different words. But this is chapter 12 instructions for everybody. And my claim that of the original 613 mitzvahs, 199 pertain to non-Jews, clashes with search engine results, such as from Google. They come back with only 7 Noahide laws. They're called Noahide because Moshe taught that they were given to Noah. All the searches quote the same content for the 7, but they all fail to notice that Rambam never called them mitzvahs, often translated as laws, but rather devarim, which in this case is better translated as categories. Therefore, to any question on this subject, Google and all the rest should more correctly come back with there are 7 categories of Noahide laws. 7 has the distinction of being the first divine number, inasmuch as holy, the word holy, is first mentioned in conjunction with Sabbath, the 7th day of creation. Holiness could be the reason why 7 is the number chosen to group the 199 detailed instructions common to all, Jews and non-Jews alike. Interestingly, Rambam grouped the entirety of the 613 instructions into 14 books. That's the first multiple of 7. The following table presents Rambam's categories and the number of individual mitzvahs that I include in each. The full details of each mitzvah, especially the details transmitted orally, are beyond the scope of this book. Still, having introduced the unusual number of 199 mitzvahs, a number that will not be found elsewhere, I have listed the 199 by category in an appendix, along with some explanatory notes. I leave it to future projects to fully elaborate on their implementation. What was that you're saying, Dan? Okay. So the category idolatry, right now I'm counting 37 of the 199 in there. Blessing God's name, idolatry is like another way of discussing it is think of fake news. We succumb to false promises, and that would be the category of idolatry. Blessing God's name is really getting close to God, developing a relationship there. That's 64 in there. Murder has to be all the things that pertain to damaging a person's body. Illicit sex is engaging in the wrong kind of intimate relationships. There's more than one. Robbery is abusing a person's property, not honoring their property rights. Justice system has 15 details in there. That's the need to set up a governing body, and do not eat a limb from a live animal. Now, I'm going to speak to this about this later, but I've got 10 different things in there because although this is only one mitzvah, but everybody translates it as don't be cruel to animals. I don't, because if you wanted to say don't be cruel to animals, That's what you should say. Don't be cruel to animals. This has got some unusual parameters to it, which makes it not logical. And in that case, there are some things that are not logical. In other words, we feel it's hard for us to grasp um, the reasoning behind it. There's a few like that. And so I've grouped them together. I think to what?
Yeah.
Really? Uh,
If you wanted a leg of lamb pre-refrigeration, you either slaughtered the lamb,
uh,
right, or you tied off the limb and hacked its limb off. And it was common practice to, if you weren't going to say, they keep the animal alive for extra days rather than it spoil. If
uh,
if so, they would. It was common practice
Very interesting. I never heard that before.
pre-refrigeration.
Yeah, but even so, it would be more. In fact, by the way, if that was necessary, if you needed to kill an animal to because that was your only source of food, and you had to do it in part time, I think that would be allowed. I'd have to look into that, but that might be allowed because it's no, no, even then, because if you need it for example, health reasons, or to be, in other words, be able to keep people healthy, etc., for some reasons like that, there may be mitigating circumstances that allow it if that was the condition. But certainly, if you would have, if you mean not to do any harm to an animal, not to just, be cruel. So there's lots of ways to be cruel. Um, okay, well, it's to be discussed. That's very interesting. Okay, so that totals up to 199. Um, Among these mitzvahs are ones about parents, prayer, and idolatry. They deserve immediate comment because they underscore my theme of creating, particularly creating relationships. So let's talk about parents. Surprise! The first thing to know about mitzvahs regarding parents is that the Torah never asks you to obey your parents. Careful though, that is only a comment about you as an adult. Children, on the other hand, must obey their parents and all their other caregivers as a matter of practical necessity and safety. The Torah did not have to and never does instruct children on this or any other matter because children are not yet morally responsible. Since we're doing this, I can do this right here live. I normally don't. Okay, back to adults. Instead of obeying, the Torah instructs adults to relate with their parents in two different ways: to honor them and to revere or respect them. Please note that honor and respect often get misunderstood as the same thing. They are not. If they were, the Torah would not have used two different verbs. I have emphasized the difference between them by interjecting the word revere as an alternative to respect. Here's how I explain the difference between honor on one hand and respect or revere on the other. Honor requires you to give dignity to someone who would not have it otherwise. Respect or revere cautions you not to take away a dignity that someone already has. These are two different spheres of activity that play out as follows. You can honor parents by standing up when they enter your presence, by attending to their needs, like shopping for them, and or just by being with them, like visiting. No one else is attending to them in these ways, so when you do, you add to their dignity. In contrast, parents usually have certain dignities already acquired, especially from when their children were young. The most common example is that children invariably call their parents by their titles, dad and mom, not by their names. Accordingly, it would detract from their customary dignity for their adult children to start calling them by name. Understanding this dynamic can be extremely useful to in-laws. Many people grapple with how to refer to their in-laws when they first get married. They feel that calling them dad or mom would somehow be a betrayal of their own parents. Various strategies ensue. Their problem may self-resolve if they would realize that they're not disrespecting by taking away from their parents, but instead are offering honor by giving something new to their in-laws. This realization often helps. Another form of respect, revere, may explain how the idea of obeying parents first arose, even though it is not quite that. This form of respect is to not openly dispute a parent's opinion. When you were young, your parents were the authority. Now that you are grown up, you should not take away that position of authority. Behave as follows. If your parent expresses an opinion, don't argue, especially if they don't ask for your opinion. This is certainly the case when you overhear them tell someone else what they think. If you disagree, stay silent. Even if you agree, stay silent. You don't need your approval, just your respectful silence. The same applies when it is you to whom they are expressing their opinion. You may not agree, and you may not intend to follow that opinion. Fine, but you don't have to tell them that. You can give the impression that you will obey. Later, if they confront you with the fact that you didn't obey, you can always give some respectful excuse, such as, I meant to, but something came up. The best way to maintain your own autonomy and dignity, by the way, is by showing respect. A simpler display of respect is never to sit in the chair or place traditionally reserved for dad or mom, because that would be taking away something they already have. Hopefully, parents will have trained their children in these and all other Torah behaviors as they're growing up, so that these behaviors will be easier to follow when they become adults. However, once growing, adults should embrace Torah instructions because they are divine, not because they are parental. Parents usually err in one way or another, causing tension between the generations. That's built into the system. No one's perfect. The Torah's addition to the system is to remind us that parents are God's agents to craft each of us into a unique human by blending a host of variables, such as genes, socioeconomic status, behavior patterns, and more, in a unique combination. The sooner we realize these factors were God's choices in bringing us into existence, the sooner we will recognize that we must and can build with them or on them. The Torah emphasizes parents as God's agents by not placing the instruction to honor parents on the second tablet of the Ten Commandments, the one describing relationships among people. The second commandment starts, don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery. It's all interpersonal. But on the first tablet, the one dealing with godly stuff, like I am the God, don't take my name in vain, keep the Sabbath, that's where parents are. Come to think of it, perhaps that is the underlying factor that gathered the higher than usual number of comments, nearly 6,000, to the YouTube of Jordan Peterson's interview of his father. There it is, the link. Comments mostly envying their intimate relationship. I'm not saying the Petersons consciously followed Torah instructions. I'm just pointing out that a good relationship between parent and offspring is envied as godly by many. Let's go to prayer. Even irreligious people pray when they run into trouble they can't handle. Have you ever wondered why they do that? What made them seek help from something they can't see? My thesis supplies a ready answer. As the subconscious aspect of God's consciousness, we intuitively turn to God for help because of that connection. War danger brings it out most strongly. As the saying goes, there are no atheists in a foxhole. Thankfully, God doesn't have to start a war to get us to pray. Any crisis will do. Probably the crisis most frequently used by God to get us to pray is a sick relative. The possibility of losing someone close is frightening. Witnessing their pain and their deterioration is heart-wrenching. Prayer is a natural reaction. Unfortunately, it's often done wrong. The first wrong thing about our prayers is to whom we direct them. My experience is that we often feel too inadequate to pray to God ourselves, so we pray instead to the doctors and nurses, please, you got to help. And after them to the rabbi, priest, or minister, please pray to God for my mother, father, whatever. When tragedy strikes, we very well should first address the medical professionals, not for miracles, but for knowledge. What does the patient need to do? What can I do? Am I speaking to the best trained and equipped people available? Such behavior is only rational, which makes it God's first preference. Pay attention to the signs. They are my rules. God never meant prayer to be a substitute for rational behavior, and praying or pleading with medical professionals should not be necessary. Pleading with a religious figure to pray to God is tempting, but should be reconsidered. Remember, we are just a figment of God's imagination. God has to be actively imagine us. That means that God is thinking up the crisis. No doubt there are umpteen reasons for it, but one of them has to be our reaction. God is giving us a strong reason to react. We should ask ourselves, what does God want me to get out of praying? That question is the heartbeat behind my mantra, prayer makes you aware. Getting an answer to a prayer should be like trying to make a sale. Yes, you're selling yourself. And the best sale comes from a relationship that has been carefully cemented. Cementing a relationship with the invisible God is especially elusive. So Torah sages compose an approach, a prayer. It consists of three behaviors: praising, asking, and thanking, which, consciously or not, build our relationship with God. Oh, that might be the reason for the crisis. By the way, this prayer teaches some good strategies for relating to anybody. You pray to God to get the things you want. That's the asking. Needing or wanting something from another is the start of every relationship. Before asking anybody for anything, it is advisable to show confidence in your request being granted. That makes the person you're asking, God in the case of prayer, reluctant to disappoint you. That is why you review God's praiseworthy qualities before asking anything, to remind yourself of God's power to do whatever. Pray with confidence. Confidence in the other party's helpfulness is a core component of any relationship. After asking, you should thank God, even though you have not yet been answered. There is always a past favor for which to be thankful in any relationship. And if you have not appreciated an old favor, why should you be granted a new favor? That goes for everyone who might help you, which is why it also goes for God, who trains us to help each other. Our parents train us that way, the same way. Please say please and thank you. Appreciation is another core component of a relationship. I thank my mentor, Rabbi Noah Weinberg, founder of H.com, for convincing me that prayer trains us in another way. Trains is not the best word, more like inspires. Rabbi Noah wanted to change the world in a way that most of his peers thought was impossible. But for the most part, he succeeded. Most of us would never think to try something unlikely to succeed. But by introducing prayer into our vocabulary, God has offered us the possibility of supernatural assistance. Supernatural means beyond normal. We can try to achieve something normally not available and succeed with God's help. After all, with God's help, anything is possible. We can even pray for success against opponents while they pray for success against us and see them both fulfilled somehow. You see, they won, but only by a fluke. We played a better game, and both sides win. We need never fear that the creativity of others will hamper our own, as long as we remember that God has no body. That means no limits. So there's an unlimited potential God can allow us to create in our minds for our bodies to achieve. Keep striving with confidence that your sincerity will be answered. Idol worship. Many times we shy away from achieving. Too much work, too much planning, too much thinking, too much to create. We would rather the problem just go away. Instead of praying for divine assistance, we turn to idol worship. Idol worship? Yeah, consider the following. Tony sought relief from a frustrating day at work by watching a 2-hour-long TV program. It worked that night to calm his nerves. So Tony subconsciously scheduled 2 hours of TV the next night, and then the next. Meanwhile, the problem at work disappeared, or maybe Tony finally adjusted to it. The day stopped being frustrated, and he no longer needed a diversion. But Tony continued the ritual in blind obedience to the comfort it once offered. 2 hours every night that Tony might have spent with his wife, his kids, or his self-improvement course, or maybe all three, became permanently lost to an idolized routine. The star of our story has become an idol worshiper. If Tony never questions the routine, he may start praying to it. How do you pray to such an idol? I hope there's a good program tonight. Or I sure hope I can celebrate my team's win tonight. Isn't thy hope the same as thy pray? Isn't it true that many of the things we celebrate, such as sports and celebrities, have no actual bearing on the lives we lead? None. Isn't it also true that many of the things we wish for are just that, wishful thoughts that will transpire one way or the other, unaffected by our hopes and wishes? Wishing them to be or praying for them or to them is absurd, but this is what we do. This common human foible should teach us not to imagine ourselves any more sophisticated than our early ancestors who prayed to idols. Speaking of ancestors, the prayers formulated by the sages of our ancestors still resonate with us because they addressed our persistent human condition. Their prayers say, get real, ask God for help, pray for the wisdom of what to do and how to start. God is the guarantee we can break through the limits we imagine, i.e., create for ourselves. Don't lose sight of unlimited God. God creates us by focusing our mind on us. It only makes sense that we can enhance our creative ability by focusing our minds back on God. Remember the electric circuit. We make God grow in creative reputation. God makes us grow in creative ability. Complete the circuit, get the energy. Idol worship again. Earlier, I described idols fashioned out of passivity. Tony just needed to relax. There are other idols chosen actively, out of passion. Tony has passions and Tony has ideals. We all do. The passions of sex, fame, fortune arise out of our nature, but are not our natural ideals, such as the ideal of godliness, the ideal of heroism, or the ideal of selflessness. Like an alien embryo planted within us, I'm evoking an image from the movie Alien, a passion can erupt from within us to dominate our thinking and erase the higher ideals we dreamt of. How do we normally rationalize the destruction of our ideals? We tend to double down. Rather than admit an error, we often defend it, even to the point of championing it. You might say we worship it. Worshipping errors turns them into idols. Do you realize how addicted people become to the satisfying aspect of what they create, such as domineering relationships, self-serving schemes, lazy pollution, pornography, substance abuse, etc.? They wind up idolizing their fleeting pleasure and brush off mitzvah behaviors that would guide them back to their ideals. In today's terms, we might label them anti-vaxxers for their avoidance of best practices, especially ones like mitzvahs that are tried and true. Don't get turned off by my use of current terms like anti-vaxxers to describe ancient mitzvahs ideas. Mitzvahs are oftentimes couched in archaic terms, leading some to think they're no longer relevant. This is a modern arrogance taken too far, another form of idol worship. The human condition has not changed. We have to take the trouble to translate Moshe's teachings about God's revelations into modern terminology. I'm trying to accomplish some of that with this book, which hopefully will help bring the next stage, Mashiach, Messiah, coming soon to a chapter nearby. Creativity and relationships. Having touched on the 7 categories of Noahide laws, I would like to also offer a 3-way categorization that reflects my theme of creativity and relationships. There are 3 levels of relationship in which we constantly engage. The first level describes the relationship we have with our intimates, such as our spouse, our family, and our friends. These make and break our emotional stability. I call these the I-U relationships, in imitation of Martin Buber, Abraham Joshua Heschel, and other scholars. I use this name to differentiate them from the 2 other types of relationships that are equally important to us, but often overlooked. With society at large, we have more distant relationships. I call these I-they relationships. They range from the civility with which we greet our neighbors to the incivility we might yell at fellow drivers. They result from the broad spectrum of expectations we have for how society should function. These relationships influence how we dress, where we live, how we entertain ourselves, and so on. The underlying usefulness of I-they relationships comes to the fore when our I-you relationships go sour. Then we console ourselves with how correct we are, at least in our I-they relationships. I'm a good person. I follow the rules. Why does my intimate spouse, child, coworker, etc., treat me this way? We also relate to ourselves, the I-me relationship. Am I happy with my body image, my knowledge base, my future prospects? Am I comfortable in my own skin? Usually not completely, as evidenced by the flourishing self-help industry. Most modern remedies turn out to be fads. Torah instruction should be our first option in this regard, being the original self-help guide. Having said that, we should realize that I-me relationships could just as easily and correctly be labeled I-God relationships, because God is the original model we were created to emulate. It is probably the relationship we are most strongly trying to satisfy with substitutes of I-they and I-you relationships. We would do better if we humbly accepted Torah guidelines for I-me, I-God relationships. I owe it to author Amy Letterman out in Arizona, who brought to my attention another insightful way of naming these three categories of mitzvahs. She wrote about believing, behaving, and belonging. Believing identifies the I, me, the I, God mitzvahs that help us define our values. Behaving identifies the I, you mitzvahs that train us to exercise our values. Belonging identifies the I, they mitzvahs through which we form a group to promote our values. I'm especially intrigued by this nomenclature because it synchronizes with the bees of the Big Bang and of Bereshis bara in the beginning. Ms. Letterman nicely summarized the whole message with the word becoming. The mitzvahs guide us to become significant. That was the longest read. That was the end of the chapter. So, how are we doing here? Are we frozen?
Nope, we're good here, Rabbi. That was rather interesting. Can I ask? I noticed earlier you said that you have an addendum about those 199 that are broken in down in that those 7 categories with the numbers to each. Have you got a master list of those? Are they in?
I'm working on it. You see over here at the left of the screen?
Back on page 143, you said you have listed the 199 by category in an appendix, and is that just that?
I know, but on the screen that I'm sharing,
Yeah.
you see on the left-hand side there's a list of titles.
Right.
Okay, those are the chapter and the break titles. And if I come down here to the appendix, I have in each category I discuss. I try and get into more detail on the details. So I do
Excellent.
that. I also have coming up um, a list of. I got to ask you about that. I've got coming up a list of YouTube videos I did about Jordan Peterson, Jewish rules for life. So we'll see if we can broadcast that on the sharing or something like that.
Well, I can broadcast the whole screen. Sure, it's a question of I don't want to do anything that's copywritten material.
No, that's all me. That's just me. Well, I do a clip of his, but we were discussing that. I just do a clip of his in order to comment on it. A very short clip. But you'll tell me what you think if I'm taken away from that. I've seen other people do it. They comment on what he said. I don't know exactly what the rules are, but anyways, so that was a peek into the details of the 199 mitzvahs, and as shows here, what was that? Next chapter is Are We on the Right Track? So that'll be tomorrow night, I guess.
On the right track tomorrow night. Now, one thing I have to let you know about Rabbi. Next Wednesday, not tomorrow, but next Wednesday on the 22nd, I have to broadcast Rabbi Skobak's wife, Hashi Skobak. We do our meditation class once a month.
Right.
She picks the days, and I couldn't stop the mix up, so I have to miss the one night only, and so it sounds like tomorrow night it'll be chapter 13. Are we on the right track? Sounds exciting. I like where this is going, and I really am inquisitive to know more about these 199 for sure. And I want to look into more details on each and every one. I mean, it's very, very relevant for B'nai Noach for sure. And yeah, I mean, most people don't realize how far reaching. I like how you mentioned that the Rambam called them 7 devarim rather than mitzvahs, because they're more like veins of gold.
Right.
I like number 7 being listed as number 7, which is rarely done. It's usually in number 6, and number 6 is usually listed as number 7. But chronologically, number 7, the last one, do not eat limb from a live animal, is the actual number 7 because it only came about exiting the ark.
Yes.
But they always place it as number 6, and the court system is number 7. I don't know why, but I always see that.
I'll tell you
the reason
why.
they do that is one is a positive. Yeah, the court system is a positive kind, whereas all the other 6 are restrictive.
So they separate it by having it number 7.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been curious as to why. I knew it was something to do with the court system, but not having any idea.
It's a proactive command, positive in that sense, whereas the other ones are negative in the sense that restrict your actions.
But that's just the title of the category. We'll see that there's a lot of positives within the category.
Yeah,
and that makes sense to me. We'll see if it resonates with the rest of you. You're open to your own opinions. Okay. So,
Rabbi, you got any questions or comments before we close down for the night, or?
Oh, not really. I'm gonna hold my tongue.
Okay.
Well, we want to thank you for inviting Hadassah with us tonight, and it's an honor to have her in the Zoom meeting as well. Hopefully you folks are enjoying getting to see it, and if you have any comments or questions, you can ask directly to the rabbi and get them answered right away. So if you're listening out there and you want to be invited to come to this Zoom meeting, we'll open it up to you. You can email Rabbi Schwartz at his email is sbs447@gmail.com. That's Sam Bob Sam, sbs447@gmail.com. And so we're going to sign out for tonight, and we'll be back tomorrow night, the same night or same time for Zoom Daily, and we're going to get into chapter 13 then. Till then, have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
You too.